So, folks, it's time for us to talk about Jeffrey Epstein, and specifically Jeffrey Epstein's ties to everything that is happening right now. The rise of fascism, the rise of the surveillance state, the rise of efforts like ICE, and the rise of concentration camps in the United States. Unfortunately, it is in fact very connected to everything that is happening right now. So let's just open up, a little bit easily, but we're gonna ramp up as we continue to talk about this. Here is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about the Epstein files.
We need to get to the bottom of it. Everyone needs to participate in this investigation. I think at the end of the day, it does not matter if you're in terms of who is implicated in this, if you're a Republican, if you're a Democrat, if you're a donor, it doesn't matter. We are talking about sexual crimes and trafficking of children, women, and victims of all kinds. And it seems to go into such a pervasive and extensive extent. Like, we just have to get to the bottom of it.
Now, the thing that I like about this particular answer is the acknowledgement that this is not just Jeffrey Epstein. And I think there's a tendency, because again, it's called like the Epstein files, the Epstein docs. There's a focus on Jeffrey Epstein as if he is a puppeteer, as if he's masterminding all of these things, when that is not really the case. The picture that is emerging of Jeffrey Epstein is less as a mastermind and more as a facilitator, someone who created a space for the rich and the powerful to come together and socialize uninhibited and without any kind of barriers. He created a space where people could say anything that was on their minds and feel listened to and connect with other people who felt the same way. Yes, in a sense, Jeffrey Epstein operated as a fixer. And it's why the project that is ongoing right now with Barry Weiss over at CBS, the kind of rehabilitation and rebuilding of the Epstein network, is a big deal, because there is still a desire to have that among the wealthy elite. I've talked a little bit about this, that the Epstein class is really a phrase that talks about class consciousness, right? What Jeffrey Epstein was facilitating was the development of class consciousness among the billionaire class, a class of people we now refer to as the Epstein class. That, in turn, meant that there didn't need to be this concerted game plan among all of these people. All it took was putting like-minded, similarly motivated people with business ideas, all articulated in relatively the same directions, together, and then they came up with the ideas that they then moved forward. And so Epstein facilitated this coming together. And it is disgusting, but the picture that we're seeing is more all-encompassing than a lot of people have even realized, right? Like, one of the primary Epstein emails that I haven't been able to stop thinking about, right, is this exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Thiel. Brexit, just the beginning. From Jeffrey to Peter. Peter Thiel, of what? From Jeffrey to Peter, return to tribalism, counter to globalization, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding the next bargain. This is from June of 2016. So that's just, again, after Jeffrey Epstein was already known as a convicted pedophile, right? What we're witnessing in these documents, and with forthcoming stories about, like, oh, these people hung out all together all the time, they knew each other, and like they're all hanging out with a guy who's a convicted pedophile, and you have to ask yourself why. In some ways, in some cases, it might be because they're also pedophiles, but in other cases, it might also just be because they recognize he is someone who can facilitate their entrance to, or their introduction to other people who are powerful, who might be able to help them because they all have aligned class interests, right? I haven't been able to stop thinking about this because essentially Jeffrey Epstein is talking with Peter Thiel about an idea that Peter Thiel now talks about all the time, right? And, this was observed just last year. The billionaires are abandoning humanity. Peter Thiel and his friends feel they no longer belong to our species. Peter Thiel has been going around the country for the last few years talking about the Antichrist and the end times, and talking about the end of civilization. And, you can see it even in this 2016 email exchange with Jeffrey Epstein. But Jeffrey Epstein is the one who is sending these ideas to Peter Thiel. You can see how these people all coming into contact with each other, all viewing each other as brilliant, incredible individuals, then gives their insane death spiral ideas more credence in one another's eyes. And suddenly, Peter Thiel has taken these ideas from Jeffrey Epstein, right? I keep thinking about the Marx quote about, essentially, I'm going to paraphrase poorly here, but the idea that if you are a rich person, people attribute to you all the things that your money can buy. Your money can buy intelligence because people can work for you who will, give you their intelligence. It can buy you women. It can buy you men. It can buy you, and so you're no longer considered ugly. It can buy you out of any kind of deficiency you might find yourself under under pressure from. Because of that, people often conflate money with ability. And so someone like Jeffrey Epstein having a lot of money, people attribute to him a bunch of ability. And in a similar way, because when you bring all these billionaire types together, they're all attributing, brilliance and excellence to one another completely unearned.
If I were a Reich man.
If I were a Reich man. Da-ba-dee-da-da-ba-da-ba-da-ba-dee-ba-da-ba-doo. Indeed. It's just, the problem here is billionaire class consciousness. Yes, Kara Calico. A colloquial way to describe that would be billionaire circle jerk. In some cases, that might have been literal in this particular circumstance. They're all coming together, not necessarily all into the child sex trafficking stuff, but I'm also not going to say it wasn't in a large part due to that, because again, these people are all depraved, right? You have to be depraved to reach that level of power and influence. And Epstein is incredibly stupid. I can't understand how this happened. Again, it's because people look at a rich person, an obscenely rich person like Jeffrey Epstein, and they're like, well, he couldn't possibly be stupid. He's wealthy. Meritocracy. And so then they have the framework there to excuse anything that Jeffrey Epstein does as just like, oh, it's just an eccentricity of his. Sure, he can barely string words together, but that's just an eccentricity of his. They excuse away any and all stupidity that they encounter as just him being eccentric. Yeah, the myth of meritocracy in this case is weaponized. Now, one thing I really wanted to highlight for you guys is that in the Justice Department document drop from the Epstein files is a roughly 3.5 hour long conversation between Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, and Jeffrey Epstein. The two apparently just shooting the shit. And I wanted to highlight this particular portion of their discussion. I recommend listening to the entire thing, and it is interesting. I'll give you that, but this really caught my attention here, right?
The money. Assume for a moment you succeed in bringing us someone who can put $1 billion on equity for some project.
Right.
That's Ehud Barak.
Big enough. Think, for example, of the China investment company. They run probably $400 billion. They can afford doing it if it's affordable.
Yes.
Okay, assume that we convince them. They say, okay, with the debt it's 2 billion.
I understand.
Out of the 2 billion, we got 3%.
I understand.
We are ready to give you 12 million
Right.
out of the 60 million we get immediately, and then smaller amounts down the
Right.
Makes
So
sense.
what Tom asked me this morning,
Yeah.
and he said he told you at Davos,
Yeah.
was he thought you should make a list of his words, not was.
Metrics.
He
as
said,
I told you.
yes, but who has IOUs to you? Is that who's out of the people in the past who you think you're close to? He said he really wanted you to make this list of this person owes me a favor, this person owes me his life, this person owes me his job, this person owes me.
Yeah, okay.
And so you got to work it backwards and say, here is my, instead of thinking about what the opportunities are first, because right now you're focused on opportunities.
Yeah.
I need you to focus on your
Yeah, okay.
personal balance sheet in terms of competences. What's your real strengths? What's the liability? One of the liabilities is you're 71 years old, so you can't be in a business that takes 20 years to make money.
Yeah.
We have to make money in the next 3 years.
So, like, he's walking Ehud Barak, right, through, well, you gotta make a list of what are your goals. You gotta make a list of not necessarily what you're looking for, but what a list of your personal dependencies. Where yeah, this is some motivational speaker bullshit, but it's also, I really want to emphasize here exactly how Jeffrey Epstein operates in order to essentially consolidate his own power and his own network. And like, I just found it very interesting, right? Like, he's being open about it.
So, people, competence, things. So, I talked to Ian yesterday. I asked him to come.
Yeah.
He flew in from London. He's for an hour.
Yeah, who can you extort? Who owes you favors, you know?
He's so same thing. Because he's very connected to Samsung, very.
Who?
Samsung, Korean
Samsung.
Yes,
Yeah.
very.
Yeah.
They pay him $3 million a year.
Just to make PR.
Yes, he has 10 companies like that now.
No.
Okay.
Okay, so do you know Ian? Yeah, Ian. Yeah, he just has 10 bullshit companies where they pay him $3 million a year a piece. Like, that's okay. All right. Samsung. Okay.
So he said there's this company called Lookout. He said he mentioned it to you.
Mm-hmm.
LOOKOUT.
Yeah. You told me.
Yep. He thinks they'll pay you a couple of $1 million to be on the board.
Yeah. That would be good.
I understood.
Yeah.
He thought there was two cyber companies, Lookout and, even though I know Peter, I've never met Peter Thiel. And everybody says he sort of jumps around and acts sort of strange, like he's on drugs.
Smoking, yeah.
Yeah.
He looks under drugs.
However, he has a company called Palantir.
Interesting. Interesting how these people are just very connected, huh?
PALLEN TIER, Palantir.
Ah, yes. PALLENTETIER. Palantir. Yes, that nailed it, Jeffrey Epstein. But here, like, that's the thing, right? When you're rich, if you're just confidently wrong, he's surrounded by other rich people who are just like, Jeffrey Epstein, what a silly, eccentric man. Dude, it's not hard to spell Palantir.
There's Peter Thiel's company, and Lookout.
Palantir, PALANTIER?
Yes.
How you write Thiel? THIELLY?
THIEL.
Yeah. LLY.
No. Thiel.
The captions are killing me. I'm sorry.
How you write Thiel? Thielly.
Thiel.
Yeah. LLY.
No. Thiel.
Just the auto captions are dying. They're dying, chat.
Okay.
So he thought that Peter would put you on the board of Palantir. Peter Thiel is one of the best. I've never met him. He's going to come here next week. So I wanted to talk to him after I talked to you.
Okay.
He and Andreessen, it's called Andreessen Horowitz. Andreessen Horowitz, that's what they pay Larry $1 million a year. Just to.
Oh, Andreessen Horowitz. You mean Mark Andreessen, the other billionaire that is currently ruining everything? Wait, is that Woody Allen? Yes, Woody Allen was one of Jeffrey Epstein's best friends. Yeah, we literally have an emote of Mark Andreessen in our chat. He's the guy who has a head shaped like an egg. Like a crazy cone head situation going on for that man. But like, we've got, like, in this conversation, just this snippet, you're gonna hear him talk about a guy named Larry. He's talking about Larry Summers. Like, we've got Larry Summers, we've got Mark Andreessen, we've got Peter Thiel, all name dropped within like the span of a couple minutes. And not only that, like, he's very, like, I've never met Peter Thiel. Dude's literally exchanging emails with Peter Thiel, right? Like, it's not difficult to figure this shit out, you know? We'll listen to a little bit more of this.
Advise them.
Andreas and
Andreessen, Andreessen, and Horowitz.
and Howard.
H-O.
Yeah, all of these guys are behind like AI tech companies. And oh, hey, guess what?
R-O.
Just you know, hey, just in case you're like, what about Elon? Surely Elon couldn't be implicated in all of this. Surely Elon would never. Oh, wait. Epstein engineered intimate relationship for Tesla's Kimball Musk. Elon Musk's younger brother. That's right. Elon Musk wanted to know when the craziest party on Epstein's child rape island would be, but just couldn't make it happen, apparently. I don't know how much I believe that, but okay. But his younger brother certainly got over there, and Elon Musk's younger brother and the woman were involved for about 6 months between 2012 and 2013. Super cool. In the lead up to Musk and the woman's first meeting, Epstein and his longtime associate Boris Nikolic labored to set them up and bring her to a birthday party Musk was throwing. And with Nikolic telling Epstein, quote, "Please prepare the woman," winky face. Musk later emailed Epstein and Nikolic in October of 2012 after lunch at Epstein's Manhattan apartment. "I believe you both played a role," smiley face. And I just want to remind you, even if this woman was not, in fact, a child at the time that this happened, this seems very much in line with all of the sex trafficking that was happening around Elon Musk. And I would like to remind you all that you can, in fact, sex traffic adults. So, just in case you're like, well, which billionaires aren't involved with Jeffrey Epstein?
Horowitz.
Horowitz.
Yes.
What they are? It's a lobbyist. What they are?
They are the biggest venture capital people in Silicon Valley.
What, bigger than Sequoia or Kleiner Perkins?
These are the new Kleiner Perkins. Everybody, these are the smart boys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those two companies right away, in terms of, I said that we need now in the next 3 weeks if you're going to leave.
I think we'll just be done here. I think I've suitably made my point. Again, I'll link this in chat for you guys to listen to on your own time. It is worth doing. But like, understand when I'm laying out the idea that these people are all connected and building this class consciousness, I do mean it, right? And speaking of, I know Jeffrey Epstein may have been really connected to Ehud Barak, a prime minister of Israel. But thankfully, we've got a direct and clear communication from an extremely trustworthy source that Jeffrey Epstein was not an Israeli asset, okay? A very, very high level and trustworthy source. Benjamin Netanyahu, of course. Wow, Jeffrey Epstein's unusual close relationship with Ehud Barak doesn't suggest Epstein worked for Israel. It proves the opposite. Stuck on his election loss from over 2 decades ago, Barak has for years obsessively attempted to undermine Israeli democracy by working with the anti-Zionist radical left in failed attempts to overthrow the elected Israeli government. Barak's personal fixation led him to engage in activities publicly and behind the scenes to undermine the government of Israel, including fueling mass protest movements, fomenting unrest, and feeding false media narratives. Wow, I'm convinced. Benjamin Netanyahu, a very trustworthy individual who, hasn't done anything awful recently. Like, I don't know, for example, literally vaporized almost 3,000 Palestinians because that would be monstrous and maybe might actually cause us to disbelieve the things he says at face value. What's this about thermobaric munitions burning at 3,500 degrees Celsius? Oh, they literally make human beings evaporate? Maybe
the fact that
that's
Epstein
bad.
was connected with Israel makes Netanyahu Mossad.
Yeah, it's Mossad indeed. The Mossad indeed. Saki Tanuki, thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. Yeah, the genocide is not over in Gaza or the West Bank. Just as an FYI, I know that's a bit of a tangent here, but free Palestine, free Gaza, and the actions that are occurring right now under the Israeli government are unconscionable evils that are a stain on the world. And we'll have to talk more about that later on. So Jeffrey Epstein, also, just as an FYI, according to this article from the Daily Beast earlier this month, very connected with a man named Donald Trump. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's apparently a president of a country somewhere. Oh, he's president of the United States. Oh, God, that's terrible. Anyway, apparently, Epstein's assistant told the federal government that he introduced Melania to Donald Trump. Maybe it was a Kimball Musk situation. Just interesting stuff. This assistant is an unnamed woman who worked for Jeffrey Epstein between 2005 and 2006. And yeah, crazy how all of these people seem to be connected and seem to be constantly hooking up women to powerful men. And that seems to just be openly being done. And then they also had a child rape island that a bunch of people like Elon Musk were all too happy to go to for wild parties. Donald Trump isn't the only guy associated with Epstein in the US government at the moment. The Secretary of Navy was also named in the Epstein files, but also so was a guy named Howard Lutnick, who is the US Secretary of Commerce. And I don't know, just interesting to note an email exchange between Howard Lutnick and Jeffrey Epstein. Here we go. Hi, Jeff. We're landing in St. Thomas early Saturday afternoon and planning to head over to St. Bart's / Anguilla On Monday, at some point, where are you located? What is exact location for my captain? Does Sunday evening for dinner sound good? I have another couple, Michael and Marcy Lerman, with me on my boat, and each of us has 4 children. 2 16-year-olds, 2 14-year-olds, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. Thanks, Howard. Now I'm gonna pause right there. It's deeply, deeply weird to apropos talk about the ages of each one of the children who are going to be attending. And I just have to ask, if that's the thing you were looking to specify, why didn't you say the ages of the adults involved? Seems weird to only list the ages of the children. Howard Lutnick. I'm just a simple country streamer and I'm not a lawyer, but that seems really, really damning. But let's see how it went from there. Jeffrey Epstein to, well, presumably Howard Lutnick. Come Saturday or Sunday lunch, Little St. James on the map behind Chrisman's Cove. So that's pretty weird, and it turns out Howard Lutnick actually had to testify in front of Congress about that earlier today. Let's see how that went. Let's just take a little snippet of how that went.
Lutnick, I think you understand the root of concern here. It's the way you described very emphatically your first encounter with him in his apartment, said you were disgusted, would never have any contact with him again. Did you in fact make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true.
Yeah, you met this guy and were absolutely disgusted by him, but not so disgusted that you didn't bring your children and your friends' children to have lunch with him on a yacht at his child rape island. I would be very interested in an interview with Howard Lutnick's children about that particular incident.
For an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's Lutnick.
Just real quick, what was that last part there, Howard?
As well, with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's Lutnick.
One more time.
The island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children.
That's a pretty weird thing to say right there, right? We left with all of my children, planning to leave one of your children there? And I just want to point out, this happened in 2012, and I want to point out that Jeffrey Epstein was convicted in 2008. 4 years prior to this, Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of procuring a child for prostitution. And that's the plea deal that he got, after a federal court identified that he had sexually abused 36 children. And Howard Lutnick is just, not to imply anything untoward happened when I brought my children to meet a convicted pedophile. Yeah, how crazy for us to ask if anything untoward happened there after you lied under oath. And I would very much like to see some kind of legal action taken against Howard Lutnick for lying under oath. I would very much like to see that. Perjury, I know this might sound crazy, is a crime. It is in fact a crime. Just out of curiosity, Oh, interesting. In the jurisdiction of Minnesota, just in the state of Minnesota, perjury can result in up to 5 years in prison. That's just an interesting little aside. I would love to see some kind of consequence for just out and out lying. But isn't it kind of weird when you start thinking about it? How many of these people around Donald Trump and around these billionaires are all seemingly implicated in this? It's almost like Donald Trump might have done more than just get hooked up with Melania. Interesting stuff. And hey, let's take a look at some other folks here, because I seem to recall there's a man named Steve Bannon who was Donald Trump's campaign director in 2016 and has continued to serve Donald Trump as effectively a shadow advisor for the past decade. And oh, hey, would you look at that? That's Steve Bannon right there. And wow, look, it's Jeffrey Epstein. Huh. Steve Bannon, the financier who made a bunch of money off of Chinese gold farming companies and kicked off Gamergate. That's so crazy. After realizing that lonely, disaffected young men who play video games online might be reachable for radicalization towards the far right. Huh. That's crazy. That's crazy. And what's even crazier is you're starting to see some real knives out for one another on the right over this. Here's Ben Shapiro on Steve Bannon.
Here's the stuff that seems to be true. Again, Epstein connected with famous rich people who knew he was a pedophilic convict and continued to hang out with him. In some cases, continued to try to burnish his reputation and getting good with him. That would include Steve Bannon. 2 hours of tape between Bannon and Epstein were released from interviews that happened some years ago. And this was in the part of Steve Bannon's career where he saw Epstein as a powerful connection and a person presumably he was going to try to rehab. There are apparently 13 hours more of that has not yet been released. It's kind of shocking to me that Bannon basically was doing PR rehab on Jeffrey Epstein and continues to go out there and be one of the main projectors.
Worth pointing out that Steve Bannon for a time was Ben Shapiro's boss, because Ben Shapiro was writing for Breitbart. When was he doing this? Ben Shapiro, Breitbart. Yeah, Ben Shapiro actually wrote for Breitbart until 2016. And, it's weird talking about his old boss like this.
Senators of the sort of Epstein dude, you should know better than anyone. You hung out with the guy. Here's the
interesting stuff going on for sure. Again, I want to point out here, all of these people are not hanging out because there is like a concerted plan amongst all of them. They're hanging out because Jeffrey Epstein was facilitating their contact with one another, was setting them up with one another, knew who to like connect who with, essentially acting as a fixer and a type of social lubricant for the rich and powerful. They then developed a class consciousness. It's why Peter Thiel and Mark Andreessen and all, like Elon Musk, they're all aligned in the policies that they are pushing for now. Also, and not to say that they wouldn't be aligned if they had no contact with each other, because capitalism provides like pretty stable incentive structure across the board to do what they do. But them all coming into contact with each other and knowing each other allows them to coordinate more directly. Oh, hey, wait a minute. That wasn't all the things we had prepared about Steve Bannon? Oh, Steve Bannon pledged to stick by Roy Moore through thick and thin back in 2017. Roy Moore, the guy who was so known for creeping on underage children at the local mall that he got banned. that Roy Moore, the Roy Moore that the entire Republican Party threw their weight behind back in his election, back in Alabama. Anyway, apropos of nothing, here's Steve Bannon's speech from 2025. Here you go.
Right now, as God is my witness, if we lose the midterms and we lose 2028, some in this room are going to prison, myself included. They're not going to stop. They are getting more and more and more radical. And we have to counter that. And what do we have to counter it with? We have to counter it with more action, more intense action, more urgency. We're burning daylight. If you look across every aspect of this, we have to codify what President Trump has done by executive order, right? We have to codify it. And people say, well, they're just going to be messing bills and pass Senate. We got to put aside these structural barriers and get on with it.
The thing is, Steve Bannon is not one of these guys who's dumb as a box of rocks. Steve Bannon is correct when he says these things. Steve Bannon knows that what is happening right now, the radicalization that is happening in leftist spaces against the fascism that is making it untenable to be just a simple centrist who doesn't stake out positions, he knows that that is going to inevitably destroy this fascist moment unless they take true authoritarian power, which is what he's advocating for here, by the way. We all have a duty, in fact, to step up and start doing more and more. Do whatever we can do to actually get involved with our local political scene, right? It's not enough anymore for us to just know what the correct political positions are. We need to actually go out into the world and get organized. Because there are existential threats stalking our streets. ICE is stalking our streets. A masked secret police is abducting people, abducting children. And not only that, we have a duty.
Hee duty.
We do have a duty, though. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. In order to actually stop these clowns. These folks are coming out of the woodwork with their last gasp at power in order to try and destroy all, not just themselves, but all of civilization with themselves. It is a complete and utter death cult. It is a spiral in which they know that it will cost them everything, their family, their friends, their very lives, and they don't care as long as they can hurt folks like you and me. And our best weapon against all of that is love, solidarity, and organization. Because you cannot organize a death spiral. It is just chaos circling the drain. And so the thing that we have to do is get organized and use all of the pressure, all of the power we can possibly muster in order to defeat these guys. And God willing, when we defeat them, they will all spend time in prison. And honestly, that is an incredible kindness to them for all of the cruelty and malice that they have unleashed upon the world.
President Trump today gave to the Senate when they came over for breakfast. Even Lindsey Graham, some of the guys he liked, and some of these institutions, I understand this is a very tough decision to make. And you're going to see some people in the conservative movement that not in a million years, because I talked to him today, quite frankly, I had Hawley on the show this morning, Josh Hawley, and he's talking about it, and I'm trying to play the institution. Well, they called me up this afternoon and said, let's go through the 10 reasons we need to do it. And these are heavy hitters on what I would call the constitutional, the limited government constitutionalist in our movement. And they're about to come out over the next couple of days and make this argument because they said, look, we have to understand that if we don't take this to the maximum, a maximalist strategy now,
which again is go full authoritarian
with a sense of urgency, and in doing this, seize the institutions. If we don't do that now, we're going to lose this chance forever because you're never going to have another Trump, right? You're just not going to have it. And
we got to close this window for them, folks, because much like actual windows, they're not just going to close if we look at them. We got to roll up our sleeves, put some elbow grease in there, and roll them down, okay? That's what we got to do. So, I do mean it. Every single time I end a segment with a call to get organized and join your local Dems. I know it might be odious to some of you to go do that. I understand. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but we need to get organized in ways that can tangibly affect our elections, that can tangibly affect our local elections and local organizing apparatuses. Okay, we need to actually do that. And so join your local Dems, radicalize them. If they are not on board with leftist policies and ideas that empower working class people in the community, organize and get them on board with those ideas. And likewise, organize with your local DSA. And if they are a bunch of like virtue signaling numbskulls, make them more effective. Out organize the numbskulls who are more interested in virtue signaling than actually organizing labor. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, and I'm not saying each and every one of you is going to meet with success, but we got to try. You know, we got to try. I mean, like, the reality is, like, it's just not stopping. And I do want to just share, again, an additional photo that I, for one, am very disturbed by here. I'm going to zoom it in. But here's a picture of Steve Bannon at Jeffrey Epstein's house. And you'll notice over here, he's talking, he's saying something. And over here, there's an image. And I'm not going to scroll out this image, but it appears to be of a young girl over a bathtub and semi-clothed. And again, the idea that people didn't know exactly the kind of man Epstein was is a goddamn lie. It's just a goddamn lie. You didn't see anything at the rape island that tipped you off that this guy was evil as fuck? Is that a picture? Yes, it's a picture. It's part of a picture. I'm not showing you the whole thing because it's gross as hell. That is evil? Yes, he was unabashedly evil. And not only that, like, we now know Jeffrey Epstein was also connected to 4chan and knew Moot, the moderator of 4chan, and appears to have been instrumental in the launching of the /poll board. And I want to like share a story that was shared by Zoe Quinn, who was the target of virulent Gamergate harassment for years and years, which is that they were instrumental in getting Gamergate talk banned off of 4chan because someone at a party came to them and said, "Hey, I've got Moot on the phone. Anything you want to say?" And Zoe Quinn responded like, "Yeah, ban Gamergate off of 4chan." And voila, it happened. And guess what came out of that? The rise of 8kun. the place where the QAnon files came out. And I bring this up because Jeffrey Epstein, in just a one-off conversation, convinced Moot to launch /poll. And, you know, just as an FYI, if you don't know what poll is, it's basically the board on 4chan where all of the Nazis went and congregated and organized. And hey, wait a minute, Jeffrey Epstein had a conversation with Moot and got that all kicked off? And Steve Bannon was a really good friend of Jeffrey Epstein? And 4chan became a really useful vector for radicalizing the far right, and Steve Bannon tapped into that, and that is what fueled the 2016 rise of Donald Trump. It's weird. It's weird how this all seems to be kind of rolling together as you look at it, isn't it? And then all of the companies that are contracting with Donald Trump's administration are these AI surveillance companies like Palantir, a company that Jeffrey Epstein championed. Mark Andreessen's AI company is on the rise, thanks to, very lucrative contracts approved by the Trump administration. And, just in case anyone is curious about this, just apropos of nothing, this is an interesting piece of Wikipedia history on Bear Stearns. In August of 2006, a month after the federal investigation of him began, Epstein invested $57 million in the Bear Stearns high-grade structured credit strategies enhanced leveraged hedge fund. The SEC filings for the Bear Stearns Fund show that Epstein's financial trust company controlled the votes of a 10% share. This fund was highly leveraged in mortgage-backed collateralized debt and debt obligations, CDOs. On April 18th, 2007, an investor in the fund, who had $57 million invested, discussed redeeming his investment. At this time, the fund had a leverage ratio of 17-1, which meant for every dollar invested, there were $17 of borrowed funds. Therefore, the redemption of this investment would have been equivalent to removing $1 billion from the thinly traded CDO market. The selling of CDO assets to meet the redemptions that month began a repricing process and general freeze in the CDO market. The repricing of the CDO assets caused the collapse of the fund 3 months later in July and the eventual collapse of Bear Stearns in March of 2008. Losses to investors in the two Bear Stearns funds were estimated to exceed $1.6 billion. And what you have right there, folks, is the kickoff to the 2008 financial collapse. I'm about to crash out. Are we really saying that Epstein had a hand in every awful thing that happened during my lifetime? Just about. Just about. Super cool stuff, isn't it? And hey, guess what? You know how we've been talking and dealing with this anti-trans panic for like the last decade? Guess who was backed by Jeffrey Epstein? Trans News Network did a great breakdown of this. Epstein-backed billionaires dinner network of prominent anti-trans figures. Lawrence Krauss, Richard Dawkins, Steven Pinker. All backed by Jeffrey Epstein. All brought together by Jeffrey Epstein. Super cool, right? It's insane. It is insane. Okay? I am just going to read part of this, all right? Last Friday, the Department of Justice released millions of new Jeffrey Epstein files mandated by a recently passed law. The information expands the body of evidence demonstrating that the predatory behavior of the prolific human trafficker and his close associates also involved a fetishistic and transphobic obsession with trans people, especially trans women. Many of those associates were part of a group called Edge.org, an atheist organization run by literary agent John Brockman and bankrolled by Epstein, who has served as a loose predecessor for the far-right intellectual dark web. During the research for this article, Trans News Network uncovered at least 8 prominent anti-trans figures affiliated with Edge or the IDW who received support from Epstein or even visited his island, often through connections with Brockman or physicist Lawrence Krauss. You've got Lawrence Krauss, and I'm going to summarize some of this because if we go too deep into it, I'm just gonna, I'm like, this is genuinely some great journalism, and I'm gonna link it here so you guys can check it out. Because it's genuinely worth your time to understand this, all right? Lawrence Krauss, very deeply associated with Epstein, like texting him inspirational quotes and stuff during his numerous then you've got Richard Dawkins in there as well. And of course, Richard Dawkins visited Epstein's island in 2002. And also that he visited the island again in 2010, along with Steven Pinker. And wow, wouldn't you know it, there's pictures of them doing that. Just as an FYI, super cool stuff. Good job, guys. Again, like, the connections made here are just absolutely insane. That we haven't even touched on the fact that there are a lot of sexual misconduct allegations against many of these people as well, which is hardly surprising given their association with Jeffrey Epstein. There's also a man named Robert Trivers, who is a biologist, and he got funding from Epstein for research about LGBTQ people, but especially trans people. Here's the document from Robert Trivers to Jeffrey Epstein. It's very simple. I will compare male to female with female to male. With greater molecular control over development, we are increasingly capable of producing novel phenotypes, more feminine men, by blocking testosterone receptors or castration, and at the same time increasing estrogen production. The one blocks male features, the second encourages female features. More masculine women, heavy testosterone dosage, incredible external effects, heavily bearded men. You would never guess they had a female bone in their body. The first kind, male to female, is 4 times more frequent than female to male. The first is attractive. He is a woman with a cock. So if that is your fantasy, to suck a man's dick, otherwise you're completely heterosexual. It'd be much nicer if the rest of the organism is female, then you get the best of both worlds. So many transsexual women are very attractive and easily make money, which in turn they assert promotes their prostitution, since they had to pay hefty fees for injections every week, but they are sexually happy. Once you have reached manhood, even castration does not prevent the sensation of organism. I assume he's trying to spell orgasm. Contrast the poor female to male versions. They are unhappy and lonely. They are men with mum-pums, the worst of both worlds. If you like smelly masculine men, you want that hard cock that comes with the show. You do not want one of nature's more complex and variable structures. The pum-pum? What the fuck is that? I've genuinely never heard that term. This is an acquired taste and not with a man. There are hundreds of female trans videos and websites. I have never seen a male one. By the way, we are now pushing the intervention earlier. So you notice your 3-year-old son has trans tendencies, so now you intervene with hormones. I'd be frightened to do that, but who knows? Like, these people are completely and utterly disgusting. Completely and utterly disgusting. Because, again, the fetishization of trans people is insane, right? Like, but the thing that they're doing, and the thing that is being funded by Jeffrey Epstein, is the entire support structure for the current transphobic, panic that has gripped the entire country. And it's been pushed by Jeffrey Epstein, by these academics who are vocally transphobic. And I want to point out, like, the transphobia doesn't mean that they cannot fetishize us. Like, obviously, this dude's super into trans girls. But not only that, there's something deeply wrong with this guy, because he's talking about, you notice your 3-year-old, and now you intervene with hormones. This guy's supposed to be a biologist. That's not how this works. That's not how the body works. This is some Mengele-ass shit. Like, you don't give a 3-year-old any hormones whatsoever. And after a whole letter of talking about sexualizing trans people, he's now talking about a 3-year-old and sexualizing the 3-year-old. It's deranged. It is deranged, disgusting behavior. And, like, we now have to deal with the consequences of an absurdly rich moron having such a concentration of wealth that he was able to mainstream this insanity into American culture, and Republicans are still running with it. I'm only touching on, like, a little bit of it, but this article also presses on the Free Press founders. Epstein's connections to transphobic figures extended outside of the atheist circle around Krauss and Brockman. One of the central figures on the media end of the intellectual dark web movement has been far-right pundit Barry Weiss, whose Substack was purchased last year by CBS for $150 million. Weiss's wife and Free Press co-founder Nellie Bowles visited Epstein for a private meeting in 2018, scheduled just before his meeting with billionaire Leon Black. And just as an FYI, in case anyone's confused about the timeline, 2008 is a decade after Jeffrey Epstein was known as a convicted pedophile. Literally everything that has made our lives like a living hell for, like, the last, 20 years is somehow connected to this network that Jeffrey Epstein pulled together. Because this is what happens when the billionaire class is allowed to amass as much power as they have. And the only way we actually hold them to account, the only way we actually stop them, the only way we come out of this okay is if we organize and develop our own class consciousness. Because they've developed their class consciousness to fuck all of us over. To fuck all of us over. We cannot allow the Epstein class to out-organize the working class. We cannot allow it to happen. Let this fuel you. Let this fuel you to go out into your communities and organize, because we need to out-organize these fuckers, not just in the upcoming midterms, not just in the upcoming election in 2028, everywhere forever until the day we die. And then we gotta give that struggle over to our children, because this cannot be our future. The working class has to stop the Epstein class. The only war that has ever existed is class war. And we see it play out time and time again. We need to stop being suckers. We need to start actually taking organizing seriously so that we are able to advocate for what we need and claw it back from these billionaire fucks. If you cannot recognize that these people are your enemies and are actively hunting you and monetizing you in order to build their doomsday bunkers so that they can live out their little network state fantasies. Because, oh, by the way, just as an FYI, the reason network state as an idea, the reason these far-right ideologues have been able to flourish, like Balaji Srinivasan, like Mencius Moldbug, the reason they've been able to flourish is because these billionaires, with their intellectual dark web prototype, have sought out more and more folks to validate their horrible, stupid ideas. And so you got Peter Thiel over here incubating at least a dozen folks who are all advocating for, yeah, no, Peter Thiel, go off, King, literal King, go off, King. Yeah, take over Greenland, King. Like, you can do it. You're the smartest and the best. And like, I'm sorry, we cannot live like serfs in the year 2026. You have to consciously refuse to live on your knees to serve these monsters. And we gotta get organized. You got more in common with literally anyone in your community than you do with any of these absolutely unconscionable assholes. You know? Yarvin is fleeing? Good. He should. Because the thing that Curtis Yarvin recognizes that a lot of folks don't is that, like, he is our natural enemy. Like, he has deliberately spent his life trying to kill all of us. And I want you to understand that. I want you to understand that for folks like Steve Bannon and Curtis Yarvin, these true believers in a coming, societal collapse, a coming time of trial in which authoritarians will rise to prominence, these people view you all as cattle that they will gladly slaughter. They are your enemies. And it's time that we started organizing as if our lives depended on us, because in a lot of ways, our lives do depend on it. The kind of future we want to live in, the kind of future we want our kids to live in, it depends on it. Because the issue that we're going to run into very soon is not just, hey, can we defeat Trump? I have believed the answer to that has been yes the entire time. But the question is, where do we go after that? And my concern, especially after watching that John Ossoff Epstein class speech the other day, is that the current Democrats are only just now finding a spine to fight Trump. But if they do not clearly stake out positions, if they do not clearly articulate a future worth fighting for, what ends up happening is that those positions are left up to the highest bidder. And the highest bidders in the room are going to be the exact same people, the exact same Epstein class that got us into this circumstance in the first place. We cannot allow that to happen. We cannot allow any victory that we win against Donald Trump to be co-opted by the same people who gave us Trump. We cannot allow it. And so when I ask you guys to organize in your local Dems, when I ask you guys to organize your local DSA, what I'm asking for is for you guys to beat not just Donald Trump, but to beat your local Democrats who are unwilling to do anything to keep you safe, who are unwilling to go to the mat for the working class, the working folk in their communities, the people who make this country run. Because these people who are out there meeting on a pedophile island to kowtow to Jeffrey Epstein and his associates, they don't give a fuck about you. They don't give a fuck. And it is time for us to organize more meaningfully in our communities, because the solution to this is going to be ground up. It's not going to be from the top. The Democrats at the top have failed us for too long, for too hard. And we have to get organized, and we got to get the people in there to do it ourselves. Full stop. There are going to be people who fight us on this. There are going to be people who fight us on this. And they might not be people who are directly associated with Jeffrey Epstein, but they're going to be associated with people who were associated with Epstein. We're going to have an entire class of people who are out to launder Jeffrey Epstein and his ties to those in power. Okay? My mind goes back to Abundance, Ezra Klein. And I just keep thinking about this stuff, you know? It's hard to shake. Let's just watch this little clip here from a show that Ezra Klein did about 6 months ago.
There's this old joke. A conspiracy theorist dies and goes to heaven. When he gets to the pearly gates, God says, "Welcome. You can ask me one question. I'll tell you anything you want to know." The guy says, I have to know. Who really killed JFK? God says, "It was Lee Harvey Oswald, and he acted alone." The man pauses for a moment, then looks up and says, "Wow, this goes even higher than I thought."
New details this morning in the case of Jeffrey Epstein.
A review from the Justice Department and FBI did not find any evidence that notorious sex offender Jeffrey Epstein kept a so-called client list.
An unsigned memo that rules out any smoking gun.
That review found, in short, nothing. No client list, no evidence of blackmail, no evidence of foul play in Epstein's death. The memo goes on to explain why further files will not be released by the Trump administration. Information related to Epstein's victims is, quote, intertwined throughout the materials. It says, "One of our highest priorities is combating child exploitation and bringing justice to victims. Perpetuating unfounded theories about Epstein serves neither of those ends." So I guess, case closed. Nah, I'm just kidding. MAGA is tearing itself apart over this.
How many of you are not satisfied with the results of the investigation?
People are absolutely not going to accept just a memo that was written that says there is no client list.
I've got to be honest, I blame Pam Bondi.
To me, her days are numbered.
100%.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years.
New theories are spinning out to try to explain it all. Maybe Donald Trump is on the list. Maybe Donald Trump or his administration is being blackmailed by the intelligence services. Maybe Donald Trump is now himself using that list to blackmail others. Maybe it's all part of the plan. Or maybe there was no list. Maybe MAGA's elite were always playing their followers for fools. The juicing of the Epstein conspiracy, the promise that there was this list and it would be released, was not a small project confined to a few outliers in the movement. This one went right to the top.
Release the list.
Seriously, we need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
MAGA has a cosmology. It has a mythology. There is a corrupt elite.
The whole thing here of like, well, there wasn't a literal list. Like, I'm losing it, bro. I'm fucking losing it. Oh, there was some kind of conspiracy, but no one else was involved with it. Dude, we've seen the pictures of his child rape island. We've seen, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It is insane that even 6 months ago, Ezra Klein was talking like this. There are going to be people who come out and call you insane, even after these huge document dumps that we are now seeing, right? Is he in the files? No, Ezra Klein is not in the files, though I believe Ezra Klein is associated with someone who has a strong financial sway over Ezra Klein, who is involved in the files. And yeah, what I'm trying to say here is that Ezra Klein serves the Epstein class, in a sense. And, I'm sure he would be very offended if someone told him that, but like, the circles that this man runs in are not the circles you and I run in. They are not the circles that, like, small little beans run in. He runs in the cocktail circuit. He runs in the circuit of the powerful and the influential. It's why his book on abundance, that steaming pile of trash, got so much traction in the Democratic Party. It's because he is influential. Yeah, millionaires paid by billionaires. Yeah. He is useful to them. In the same way, like, the Washington Post is useful to Jeff Bezos. It is useful for him to launder his ideas to the general public. The same way the Dearborn Independent was useful to Henry Ford to spread his ideas of white supremacy and anti-Semitism. In a similar way, Barry Weiss and Ezra Klein are people who are useful to these billionaires, and they know it. They know it. And maybe Ezra Klein knows it a little bit less, but Barry Weiss certainly knows it explicitly. But, like, the argument is essentially seems to be from him, like, well, they didn't have an actual list, though. And surely the Trump administration wouldn't just lie to us. You mean the Trump administration would do that? Just lie to the American public? We're asking for, like, some degree of, I don't know, in some degree of skepticism, I guess. Yeah, Edward Gregorian has gotten to Ezra Klein. But, like, we are also seeing a pivot from people who, as far as I know, don't have an association with, the Epstein class. But we're seeing a pivot from people like Richard Hanania. Hating Epstein represents the essence of anti-Semitism, the resentment of mediocrities, conspiracy thinking, and chud moralism. Like, you've got people like Richard Hanania. You've got Michael Tracy over here. I've read the trial transcripts, reviewed virtually all of the exhibits, subsequent appeals, etc., including a large amount of material that simply wasn't publicly available in 2021. The trial was absolutely shambolic, and the evidence was laughable. Maxwell was wrongly convicted. Like, who is Richard Hanania? Richard Hanania is a white supremacist who is explicitly into race science as a concept, who was outed for writing under his pseudonym, like, I don't know, a handful of years ago. And mainstream press has, for whatever reason, decided to grant him clemency and say, well, I mean, he admitted that he was wrong to be a racist, so we can treat him like a normal guy again, while he, again, continues to still say the same racist drivel he said before, just gussied up with essentially scientific, mumbo jumbo, like just scientific gobbledygook. It's just race science reborn, race science 2.0. And, like, I feel like I'm being far too kind to his position. I don't know, like, these people are going to be out there doing everything in their power to tell you, oh, no. Don't look into this Epstein stuff. There's nothing there. Don't worry about it. Hey, guess what? Actually, the argument that we're going to make is that we're all in the Epstein files in a way. Maybe the real Epstein files, maybe the real people who are in the Epstein files were the friends we made along the way. Am I right? And that all sounds like a joke, right? Like the words that just came out of my mouth. Did they sound like a joke to you guys? Did they sound like a joke to you guys? Stop. No fucking way. Yeah, I'm about to drop a little bit of a hammer on you guys. Here's a podcast called Central Air that Ross Do That was on. This is a podcast hosted by Josh Barrow and Megan McArdle and Ben Dreyfus. It's genuinely titled "We're All in the Epstein Files." I gotta be honest with you, this is an hour and 16 minutes. I might listen to this while I work out.
It'll drive you Google debunkers.
Google debunkers.
Indeed, Sake Tanuki. Thank you for the 2 tier 1 subs. But also, I'm gonna listen to this entire thing, because I don't want to subject you all to the entire thing, just to see if it's worth sharing with you guys at a future date here. But I just want you guys to know I've read some of the excerpts from this, and it is... let me just pull the excerpt here. Here's an excerpt from about 15 minutes in. She's 16. It's not like she's 4. And we have now really shifted on how we think about that, I think, in a good way. Right? I do not think that 50-year-old men should be having sex with 16-year-old girls. But I think you're not going to find the evidence of a pedophile ring where he is actively trafficking these girls, because until Me Too, it's not like a pedophile, right? There are 16-year-old girls around who are vulnerable and can be exploited, but not in this, like, there's a mastermind who is going on the dark web and selling these girls to you. They're just around, and they're close enough to the age of consent that a lot of people probably felt like it was okay to hit on them. That is a direct quote from this. I believe it is from Megan McArdle, from the episode "We Are All in the Epstein Files." And I just want to say, we're not all in the Epstein Files, and it was always really fucking gross for grown-ass men to hit on 16-year-old girls. Underage girls.
I feel like we have to tear down the disinformation machine to tear down the Epstein class fully.
Well, keep in mind, Spot Dogs, the folks who are pushing AI and creating an even worse disinformation machine, they're doing that at the behest of the Epstein class. The Epstein class is the biggest reason right now why AI is being pushed into everything. And like, I just want to say, yeah, we gotta fight this disinformation machine. We gotta fight AI. And one of the best ways we can do it is by organizing on the local and state level to kick these AI companies out of our states. Fight the local AI data center. Fight the disinformation. Like, demand accountability from elected officials. I think elected officials should be held to higher standards of speech than everyday folk. Like, I think if you're an elected politician, you shouldn't be able to go on television and just tell lies. I don't think you should be able to go onto the floor of Congress and just tell lies, which is what they currently do, right? And they do it on purpose because the lies are part of their media strategy. Whenever you see Mike Johnson these days in front of a camera, he is lying nonstop through his teeth. And there should be legal consequences for that. And so I just want you guys to know we are right now in an existential and informational battle, an info war, if you will, with folks who have a very vested interest from the folks who they know and socialize with and work with to lie to us and to try and say, well, it's not that bad to have sex, for a grown man to have sex with a 16-year-old or a 14-year-old. It's not like they're 4. Like, I'm sorry, these people should not be allowed the platforms they have. Yeah, like, I'm also, anyone who has been 16 and is now an adult understands that when you were 16, you were a babby. When you're 16, you don't necessarily feel like a babby. But even when you reach like 22, 16 is a babby. Okay?
Truth to power, dog.
We have to organize, and we have to beat these people. We have to beat them. Underage woman is such a gross term. Wait, did I say that? I hope I didn't. Because it is a gross term. Like, they're having sex with children. I know so many women who, when they were were getting catcalled by adult men. I know so many women who, when they were 14, were getting actively hit on by adult men. It is it is an unbelievably common issue. Oh no, you were reading it. You didn't say it. Thank you. Okay, cool. I wanted to make sure. And like there just has never been a reckoning with the fact that one of the biggest and most popular Reddit boards ever was r/jailbait, a Reddit board for the fetishization of underage girls. There is an unaddressed and hugely, hugely necessary conversation we need to have as a society around the sexualization of children. And frankly, to be real with you guys for a minute, one of the reasons that men like Jeffrey Epstein and the rich and the powerful were so against the Me Too movement, and just as an FYI, Jeffrey Epstein was pivotal behind the scenes after Me Too, talking with and consoling with and counseling different men accused of sexual misconduct and assault. As an FYI, I'll link this in the chat. You guys can check it out all over the place. But part of the reason there was such a backlash to Me Too from these rich and powerful folks was because they didn't want they didn't want the even worse allegations to come out, you know? Because part of the thing is, when you are a sexual predator like Jeffrey Epstein, part of the reason you prey on kids is that, like, well, kids are harder for folks to believe. It's easier to gaslight a community against a child. It's why oftentimes in communities, the sexual predators who prey on children are hide behind the identity of as pillars of the community, you know? Well, they're well respected, so how could they possibly be a predator? Disgusting. What about what women do? Yeah, women should also be held to account for preying on children. One of the reasons Ghislaine Maxwell should rot in prison for the rest of her days is because she also raped children. This goes in all different directions. There should be accountability for any adult who rapes any child. It doesn't just, like, the idea of coming into chat and talking about, like, oh, what about when adult women do it? It's also bad. It also needs to be prosecuted. Part of the double standard that exists, I want folks to understand, is a result of patriarchy. It's a result of male dominance in society, right? Because I remember growing up and grown men telling, like saying, oh, you know what? God, I wish that had happened to me. When seeing stories about, like, adult teachers having sex with their students. If like a adult woman teacher had sex with their child student, there would be so many grown-ass men being like, oh God, I wish that were me. Because there is, like, a weird fucking thing when it comes to this about, like, again, just like this, I don't even really know how to describe it. It is part and parcel with patriarchy, the desire to, like, I don't even know how to articulate it. It's just gross, and it needs to be addressed. We need to have more conversations of this, around this. And yeah, we should have more conversations about the prevalence of homeless children who then get taken in and abused, which is all too common. But I think we got to be done here, because I'm on the verge of losing it. But I hope you guys have been able to understand and trace the case I've laid out here, which is that Jeffrey Epstein was not the main, like, guy. There wasn't necessarily a main, like, coordinated idea between all of these guys. Instead, they all united under shared class interests, and then they abused the power that they all collectively had in order to prey upon children and adults and cover up their crimes. And not only that, they then furthered that class interest in a way that has systematically ruined basically all of our lives. Like, there's not really a way to sugarcoat it here. Like, all of our lives, all of our lives have gotten measurably worse because of what these people have coordinated to do. And we need to out-organize them. So join your local Dems, radicalize them to more progressive ideas, join your local DSA, make them more effective, hook them up with local labor organizing in your area. And folks, I guess if you have any thoughts about all of this, please leave them in the comments. I'd very much appreciate it. Leave a like, subscribe, and holy shit, we live in a really, really fucked up world. But the good news is it doesn't have to remain fucked up. And we can, in fact, organize to make it better. And everyone who came before us organized to make it better. And everyone after us will continue to organize to make it better. But our job is to move that ball forward. Okay? Leave the world a little bit nicer and kinder than we found it. And hell, if we can get a lot nicer and kinder than we found it, that's the dream. For those who come after, indeed, T-Life. That being said, let's keep going.
Riverboat Jack is coming to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube and swishy streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, being plenty more. Your sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack.